We'll call our meeting to order and let the minutes reflect all members present. And the first thing we'll do is set the agenda today. Does anybody like to add or subtract from the agenda? With that, I'll need a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next thing is approval of the minutes.
Madam President, I move to approve the June 13 draft watershed management plan workshop.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Madam President, I move to approve the June 11th, 2019 workshop minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And, Madam President, I move to approve the June 12th, 2019 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next thing is the consent agenda. Patrick?
Madam Chair? Of course, I will bring up few things on the permits. Is
Okay.
that what you're ready
Well,
with?
let's wait and see. Did you have any other comments on it before we,
No, not till the variance.
no
Yep.
changes? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The first one, this one on the drainage plan on 18-121. And I've got a map here, looking at it on page 35. I'm just questioning, there's this impervious surface, they're adding 8,620 more square feet of impervious surface. And I was noticing that it talks about, in the picture on 35, of where the water's gonna go, and there's one big blue arrow that heads down there, you go, to the right, and I see. Who owns that property? Is it their property of the wetlands? Is it going there? I mean, is it going to be put on somebody else's property?
Manager Hockey, so the parcel is more or less that orange piece. There's a cut adjacent
Okay.
to 101st Avenue Northeast, but that's the parcel that they own.
Okay, and the water is going to go as a big blue arrow, and it heads like it's going down to the wetland, right? That's the property that's gonna have the additional square footage of impervious surface, right?
The orange parcel.
The orange part.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and then it heads, so, what we say is that, any water that is being, or any impervious surface and it's being, water will be displaced, it all is supposed to stay within the property lines and not go into somebody else's property. So I'm just wondering where, or what is this when it shows it's going over here? I see a purple line, who owns what, and is that going to be on somebody else's property, on the property of this larger trucking thing?
Madam President,
Chris,
Manager
yeah,
Hockey,
please.
The property drains over to a part of Anoka County Ditch 5362. That's one of the branches that's there that it's draining to.
So that's the drainage flow.
Yeah, that's the general flow path going over that direction. And of course, it has to go through a pond and a wetland to get over to the ditch, but that's where it eventually goes to.
Okay, and does this go over the surface of that developed piece of property? Because, and are they burying a pipe, or
You're asking how it's getting from the
how
orange
is it getting
section
from the
to-
orange to that
There
other
you go.
section where it goes to our ditch? That's what my question is.
Yeah.
And if it's going to the ditch, okay, it's a ditch, it's not being stored there. I know the engineers do a wonderful job. I'm just trying to get a little bit more of an explanation.
Chris, you can answer.
Manager Hockey, while
Yeah.
Chris might be looking into this, I just want to mention that Rule C is not triggered for the project, our stormwater management plan rule.
Okay.
Because there is less than 10,000 square feet of new or reconstructed impervious surface. So while we're, still attentive to rate control based on our sediment and erosion control rule, we're not treating for the water here. We're not requiring anything.
Okay, so tell you what, let Chris keep examining, because, I have another one anyway. I just want to know how that
Madam
water
President,
is
Manager
flowing
Hockey,
over.
I guess I can't tell you at this time exactly how the water gets over there. I don't know the routing of it, if it's under a storm sewer that's under the adjacent property, or if it's along the right-of-way at 101st Avenue. I guess if that's something that you would like us to get back to you on later, I
Why don't
can,
you
but
get
I
back
would
to
have
me
to-
and won't stop what's going on, but I just would like to know, because I don't understand that. And the other thing is, this is a trucking terminal, it's a trucking business. Now, okay, in the past, when I've been on planning commissions, we're always worried about all of the types of pollution that can come off of trucks, and they have to wash them, and there's oil changes, et cetera, et cetera. And I had been told by this organization, Rice Creek, that's not our duty to pay any attention. It's the city's duty to pay attention as to what they're going to do to try to make sure that this does not get into our waterways or the wetlands or anything like that. But I think that there should be something that also makes sure we understand when, and especially if the water's gonna go over the top of this and it's going into the watershed district, and you're putting in another 8,600 square feet, and it's a trucking terminal. And I'm gonna be bringing it up again because I think the next one that we've got is another trucking terminal. And some way or another, I'd like to know the quality of the runoff and what's being done, and when it goes into a storm sewer, if they've been, some way have catch basins in these trucking terminals that catch the pollution.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, that's a long
President
story.
Manager Hockey, just one thing to note is that this project that we're discussing here, it is less than 10,000 square feet of impervious, so
I
it
heard
does not
that.
trigger part of the rule.
I heard
And-
that.
And so we don't have a rule to cover the water quality treatment
Mm-hmm.
for that particular site.
I heard that, this 10,000, I know, it's been accepted. 19019. And that is another impervious surface that goes to Long Lake and Pike Lake. And it's an infiltration, the subsurface infiltration basins, it's on page 44. My question is that if there's, what, 3 of them? How many are those subsurface infiltration basins are there?
Manager Hockey, there are 3 proposed.
3 proposed, okay.
And I don't know if you have the graphic to show on there,
sure.
Patrick, but on the graphic, that's on page 47 of
Yep,
the
page
permit file. You
47.
can see there's 3 separate shadings there with a kind of a blue crosshatch, or those are
Right.
those locations.
Right. And I see that they're covering this impervious surface is covering almost the whole property, number 1. Number 2 is, if it's subsurface, that means it'd probably go underneath, and the one in here is, totally looks like it should be underneath the building. How, and what kind of maintenance agreement, and who cleans that out, and who's gonna maintain it when you have drainage that's going to go through that basin? Do they put in another maintenance agreement on that?
Yes, so the applicant is responsible for doing the maintenance of the BMPs that are on site, that are being proposed.
Okay, so then,
And
they-
that's a part of number 5, under administrative stipulations, or I should say requirements, is that the applicant must submit the draft declaration for maintenance on the stormwater management facilities. So they, like I said, will be responsible for that, and, ultimately, and I don't know if, Patrick, if you happen to have the graphic that shows the location of these stormwater facilities with regard to the proposed structures on site. But again, since this is a redevelopment, they're going to be totally changing the
Redevelopment,
site,
this
so
is-
the location of these with respect to existing structures on site are gonna change, because again, those structures are gonna be moved, modified, what have you.
you do see that it's a very small redevelopment. They're taking it out, but they're building huge apartments or condos or whatever. And when you have it, usually that goes over to a condo association or something that, and so you say it's a developer that's going to be doing it and they're going to do something to make sure that they're drained or cleaned out, these underground, infiltration basins. If that's going to be true, then you've got a problem of where does the developer go after it's sold? And now it's owned by the people and it's a condo association, and how does that get carried on that it's going to get cleaned out? I mean, I'm talking about even the future. We can say the developer is gonna handle it.
That's usually an agreement between the city and the
Condo owners?
yeah, and then it goes to the association, and the association collects money to have that done every so many years.
Well, that's what I wanna know, if it's all
It
those
should- I
things
assume
that are
that's
being
between the
followed
city
through.
and the, that's the way it was in the one that I aware of. Go ahead.
Barbara, one other thing, you were asking about the infiltration systems, and on page 44, it gives a bunch of detail on them.
Oh, I see that, subsurface, there's some pumps and pre-treatment, et cetera, the
Yeah.
volume and everything, I see that. But my concern is that how is that going to be managed in the future?
Right, I understand, I just.
I know
were
you do,
asking- yeah.
but thanks, I noticed all that.
Okay,
But, I guess I've got three more, and it's almost like I don't even want to discuss it
Go
because
ahead.
it just doesn't know where it's going to go. Page 50, it's another trucking, 19043, and again, infiltration, small basins, are they adequate? Number 19048, page 61, this is Jones Lake that's going to end up having, and there's 2 underground infiltration.
down.
Well, I'm getting a little bit worried about, frustrated.
Slow down so we can hear.
so your main concern is the future maintenance, if I understand.
Well, that is that. It's
Okay.
also the trucking terminals, infiltration. Now, there's a gentleman right there. Which one are you there for?
19048, Streams Edge Properties.
19048, Jones
Name,
Lake that's
please.
going to
Yes.
get it. Okay,
Yep, so I can
Infiltration,
address
yeah,
some of
these-
your
yeah,
comments
thank you.
on this particular site.
thank you.
Okay,
We're not doing infiltration basins. We did infiltration testing on this, this site, and it's just not conducive. The soil is not conducive to infiltration. So we are doing underground storage, though. So it, acts similar, although everything is drained out 100% through pipes. Before it goes into the basins, every one of our catch basins have sumps in them to collect all the silt and everything before it goes in there. We are putting it all in a water quality row, an isolator row in the front end, so that way that row could easily be cleaned out at a maintenance time frame. And then right after the basins, it goes through water quality structures with filters that are also on the maintenance. We are entering an agreement with the city of Roseville that is recorded, goes in perpetuity to whoever the landowners are, that these things will be maintained.
Okay.
So
And that's the
hopefully
normal
that
process.
addresses your question in regards to
Yeah,
Streams
yeah,
Edge properties.
you, very good, and thank you
So-
for being here.
No.
Now, this is also a trucking terminal.
Yes,
And what do you do to collect, and are you washing the trucks inside the buildings, and what do you do to collect all that?
we are changing oil in this facility.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
are some
yeah.
maintenance items that do occur. That is all inside the building. That goes through an oil water separator into a sanitary sewer system. It
And
does
into
not-
the Senate, see, that's what I
That's correct.
figured it does that too.
Yes. So, yeah, because it's inside the building, it has to go to the sanitary. It cannot go to the storm.
My blood pressure's down just a little bit.
So, yes.
I
Yeah,
appreciate you being there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. I guess I'm not going to do it anymore, but at least you gave some things, and I hope some of these other trucking things are doing the same thing you're doing with the separation and double checking, because,
well, they basically have to follow the same procedures, that everybody would be in the same.
yeah,
And the
I
same
mean,
just want to make sure that
you know,
it's
we've been
being
working
done.
with your engineers. They
Yeah.
are very
Oh,
diligent in
I
regards
know they
to
are.
requiring all this information, us providing O&M manuals to them, and then the city then stacks on top of what you guys require and requires us to record it.
And you as a developer feel, I've got all these hoops to jump through, and then you've got somebody like me that asks questions that you think, holy cow, we still aren't done with this.
This is why we show up to every one of our meetings, is just to make sure,
Okay.
we need to make sure that you guys feel comfortable with what we are doing,
Okay,
so.
thank you very much, thank you.
Madam President, Magic Hockey, just to address your question too, there are multiple state requirements, standards, rules that are required for sites like that to address avoidance of potential contaminants going downstream, and that's, again, why, as he indicated, that they have requirements to have that, those kind of stations go into the sanitary sewer rather than going off into the surface water.
But I still can worry about sanitary sewer too. All right, thank you so much.
No problem.
Appreciate
Any
it.
other questions, just let me know.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions from the board on any of these?
Patrick, I'm sorry that I ended up putting you on a hot spot there too.
That's fine. Manager Aki, I guess I'll just add one more point. I think, Chris kind of touched on it a little bit. So one of the conditional approval items will be, that long-term maintenance agreement. Our default is that it's something that's recorded on the property, so it kind of runs with the title. There are opportunities where the city can enter a programmatic or, maintain the basins as well. But we will be, getting one of those documents, so.
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, we have a consent agenda. Anybody like to make a motion? Any further questions on them, any of them? If not, we'll have a motion.
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda consisting of permit requests 18-121, 19-006, 19-019, 19-043, 19-045, 19-048, in accordance with the Rice Creek District Engineer's findings and recommendations dated June 18 and 19, 2019,
Caprock.
subject to the CAPRAC requirements contained in the
Yes,
district's
you included
findings
when
and
you said it.
recommendations.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a second.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Next.
President Priner and Board of Managers, we do have one variance request today regarding permit application 19046. I will have Houston Engineering give a brief description of the project, and then we will run through the criteria.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Madam President, the quick summary on this project, the project is located on Manitou Island, in White Bear Lake. It's proposing to reconstruct and enlarge a garage that is located within the floodplain area from White Bear Lake. And this is on a single-family residential lot. Project, of course, does drain to White Bear Lake, which would be the resource of concern. Property itself is about 1.2 acres, of which only 0.05 acres are proposed to be disturbed for this garage reconstruction. Impervious surface area increase will be minimal, only approximately 0.01 acres. And we have within our document information regarding the floodplain elevation for White Bear Lake. The project is proposing to reconstruct the garage at the same location it currently is now, and only approximately 0.4 of a foot above the regulatory flood elevation. District Rule E3G would be requiring 2 feet of freeboard, meaning 2 feet of separation from the low floor of the structure to the 100-year flood elevation. And this is what the applicant is requesting variance from.
Okay. Criterion A, how substantial the variation is in relation to district rule requirements.
Applicant is proposing to rebuild the garage in the same location as it was. The existing garage is approximately 80 years old, and it's been at the same location this entire time, meaning it's been within 0.4 of a foot of the 100-year flood elevation for this time, and this is the difficulty in meeting this requirement.
Criterion B, the effect the variance would have on government services.
Issuing the variance is not expected to increase the cost or difficulty of providing government services. City of White Bear Lake has already reviewed and permitted the project. As part of their review and permitting of the project, they granted 4 variances. One was for a 50-foot setback from the ordinary high water level lake. One was for a 40-foot setback from the road. One was for a maximum allowable square footage from auxiliary buildings on the site. And then the fourth variance was for a 3-foot freeboard requirement from the 100-year high water elevation, which is also referred to as the base flood elevation by the city. So in this case, the city actually has a higher requirement or greater requirement than the district has with regarding freeboard.
Okay, part one of criterion C, whether the variance will affect a substantial change in the character of the watershed resources.
So in assessing this change, whether a substantial change in the character may occur, we considered a number of different items, which include whether or not it's an impaired water, a high quality or non-degraded wetland, federally listed threatened and endangered species, scientific and natural area as defined by the DNR, whether it's resource protected from degradation under Rule 7050-0180, and whether there are other generally sensitive resources. The project is proposing to place a little under 5 cubic yards of fill within the floodplain to accommodate that larger footprint of the garage. That amount of fill will not change the 100-year flood elevation of White Bear Lake. Thus, under Rule E3E, the floodplain mitigation of less than 10 cubic yards does not require mitigation. Proposed fill in addition to not meeting the freeboard requirements, is not expected to result in any of the, to affect any of the items that I mentioned above related sensitive or, I guess, as sensitive water bodies or habitat. And the project is compliant with all other district rules except for Rule E3G.
Part two of criterion C, whether the variance will be a substantial detriment to neighboring properties.
For this criterion, we consider whether the variance will cause or contribute to a 100-year flood plain elevation, whether it will increase the frequency or magnitude of flood damages to adjacent properties, or whether it will increase hardship to downstream from peak flow or flood duration. The proposed fill of just under 5 cubic yards and not meeting the freeboard requirements under E3G is not expected to have a negative effect on neighboring properties and is allowable by Rice Creek rules.
Criterion D, whether the practical difficulty can be alleviated by a feasible method other than a variance.
For this, we reviewed several different alternative design options that would potentially be available to the applicant. The first option would be to raise the building level up to meet the 2 feet of separation. The applicant indicated this would require significant fill grading and change of topography around the shoreline of the lake. The additional work would also damage or require the removal of 45 mature trees. Second alternative looked at would be to move the footprint of the garage in order to avoid triggering Rule E. And the applicant has indicated this option would avoid potential shoreline impacts, but would potentially damage or require removal of approximately 36 mature trees on site. And regarding both of these options I mentioned above, the city of White Bear Lake does not have any tree preservation ordinance that applies to the project that would prohibit the removal of those trees. In addition, the tree survey on site indicates that predominantly these trees are 5 to 7 inch cedar trees in area with several larger size, 14 to 18 inch diameter oak, ash, willow, and maple trees. Then the last alternative that was investigated was to raise the potential to the proposed garage through the use of block footings. Essentially, you'd place the structure up on blocks to make it higher rather than regrading around the site. The applicant indicated that with the water table so close to the garage floor elevation, that there would likely be inadequate soil conditions to construct a footing and poured block foundation wall structure that would be required for such a construction. The groundwater table is assumed to be approximately at the water level of the lake, which is only 1.84 feet below the proposed garage floor elevation. The applicant has indicated that they would then have to add piling structures and bring in stabilized soil to achieve adequate compaction. And the project as is currently proposed was designed to be a slab on grade, just essentially a floating slab structure with frost protection to address the less impact of the excavation on the site and disturbance of native soils, tree roots, regrading the site to minimize the impact on the trees. So essentially, they're trying to reduce that footprint. To clarify regarding all these items, the district engineer has not independently confirmed the difficulties characterized by the applicant, but does find that the applicant's alternative assessment to, or I should say, the engineer does not find the applicant's alternative assessment to be unreasonable.
Criteria, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Criterion E, how the practical difficulty occurred, including whether the landowner created the need for the variance.
So the district engineer finds that the current landowner did not cause the situation which led to the undue hardship. The existing garage is over 80 years old, and the applicant represents that the structure is beginning to fail and needs to be rebuilt for safety reasons and to accommodate standard garage door sizes. The need for variance was created by the desire to rebuild the failing garage in its current location and to not impact existing trees. Per the discussion above, the applicant has indicated that the proposed project design is the most desirable to protect existing trees and is willing to accept the reduction in freeboard and increase in potential risk of flooding to their own proposed garage, thus has requested variance from the freeboard requirement under Rule E3G.
And lastly, criterion F, whether in light of all of the above factors, allowing the variance will serve the interests of justice.
As always, this criterion lies largely in the board's domain as it involves judgments of a non-technical nature. One criterion for assessing this portion of the practical difficulty standard is the ability or inability of other permit applicants with similar site conditions to comply with the district's freeboard requirements under Rule E3G. Other applicants have had the ability to feasibly meet these requirements on site, and the practical difficulties provided by the applicant are not unique to the site. Another consideration is the relationship of the existing rule to the public interest. The intent of Rule E3G is not to protect a downstream resource, but rather to decrease the risk of damage to the landowner's property. In this case, the applicant has demonstrated acceptance of the inherent risk, increased flood risk. With this in mind, if the board decides to grant the variance request, it's our recommendation that the applicant record on the property that the proposed garage was built with a freeboard of 0.4 feet above the 100-year flood elevation, which is non-compliant with RCWD's standard freeboard regulations.
Okay. Board questions? Anybody?
No?
Since he's taking responsibility for everything without footings and it's just a floating slab, I guess there's nothing else, because anytime people put in a garage or do something, you end up putting some sort of footing in it. It's just practical, good construction, but it's all recorded. It's his baby, her baby, or whatever.
Madam President, I appreciate the consideration for a future buyer by putting that notice in there, right directly in the deed, so.
I agree with that.
Anybody? We could use a motion. Page 66.
Madam President, I move that we approve the variance request for application 19-046 as outlined in accordance with the Rice Creek Watershed District Engineers Variance Technical Memorandum dated June 12, 2019.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then we need a motion for the permit application.
Madam President, I recommend that we Caprock permit 19-046 as outlined in accordance with Rice Creek District Engineers' findings and recommendations dated June 19, 2019.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, so right now we're going to recess our regular meeting and proceed to a public hearing. The public hearing is now open on the Rice Creek Watershed's proposed ordering of the Bald Eagle Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project. The purpose of the hearing is to receive comments from the public on the project proposed to be constructed in partnership with White Bear Township. Before the Watershed District can provide funds for capital improvement, state law requires that the Board of Managers hold a public hearing, receive public comments, and make a judgment that the project is a sound and cost-effective project to help fulfill our water resource goals. That is the purpose of today's hearing. In accordance with state law, notice of this hearing was published for 2 consecutive weeks in the St. Paul Pioneer Press and mailed to all cities within the Watershed District as well as the 4 counties. First, I'd ask Kyle Axtell, our project manager, to give a brief presentation of the proposed project. When his remarks are completed, the floor will be open to any members of the public. At that time, if anybody wishes to comment, or if they come in later, we will get their name and address for the record. During public comment, managers are welcome to ask questions of commenters to clarify their remarks. I may also ask Kyle Axtell to respond to technical questions raised. Managers will hold their comments about the project until the public hearing is closed. At that time, the board will have the opportunity to discuss the project. Kyle.
President Reiner, thank you. For members of the board, members of the public, we are again here today to talk about the Bald Eagle Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project. This is a site that is located on Ramsey County Ditch 11 in White Bear Township. Bald Eagle Lake downstream is the resource of concern that this project will effectively improve the quality of runoff to the lake. It is currently impaired due to excess phosphorus. As the board is aware, this is an area that the Watershed District has undertaken significant work over the last decade and has made great strides in improving water quality. This project will further that effort. 2012, a TMDL and implementation plan were approved for Bald Eagle Lake, and then this project specifically was identified in a sub-watershed assessment completed for the south end of Bald Eagle Lake in 2016. On the map here, it is project number 4-3, right in the center of the screen with the orange dot. So that shows you the approximate location of the project. Ramsey County Ditch 11, which is shown with the blue line in that figure, drains a large wetland complex just to the east of Highway 61, as well as a large portion of the Highway 61 commercial corridor down into downtown White Bear Lake, as well as other surrounding residential areas outlined in that map. Flows to the lake from Ditch 11, while they're not the highest volume to Bald Eagle Lake, they are traditionally very high in phosphorus concentrations during those storm events. This drainage system has almost no water quality treatment of any kind, or very, very little that's been constructed to date due to the age of development. And this project is being proposed because iron enhanced sand filter projects have been shown to be effective at removal of both particulate and dissolved phosphorus, upwards of 80 to 90% total phosphorus removal. The goals of the project, we've had Houston Engineering already complete a feasibility study for this project, which was the basis for our grant application to Bowser. The project is expected to remove annually a little over 43 pounds of phosphorus a year, as well as 1.38 tons of sediment from runoff to Bald Eagle Lake. It's very effective from a cost-benefit analysis. Over the 25-year lifespan, it's averaging about $455 per pound of phosphorus. In that sub-watershed assessment that I mentioned, it's the second most cost-effective, what I would call a major project or capital project in the report. This one happened to be more implementable than the first most cost-effective one. White Bear Township has been an active partner. They are providing 3/4 of an acre of land with which this project will be constructed on, and the project agreement between the Watershed District and the township was approved by the town board on June 17th, 2019. The picture there shows Ramsey County Ditch 11 at Eagle Street in White Bear Township. You can see it's in rough shape. My understanding is that Ramsey County will be kind of reconstructing that embankment and placing a new structure to connect some culverts there, which will
ultimately aid in the stability of that site, which is directly adjacent to where we'll be building this project. Concept project layout here, north is to the left on the screen, so we've got this tipped on its side. The blue line shows the approximate current flow path of Ramsey County Ditch 11 through the two properties. The large triangle here at the south end, we would be proposing to construct a wet pond in line with the ditch, which will provide passive water quality treatment for the ditch itself, and will essentially act as a sediment basin on the ditch, regardless of whether or not the filter's running. It also provides a stable submerged inlet location for us to draw water from that pond up through a pump system and into potentially 3 or so proposed iron-enhanced sand filter beds. So this project will function very similar to what we've constructed at Hanson Park and Oasis Pond previously. Outflow from those filter beds will travel via drain tile to a vault and then culvert right back to Ramsey County Ditch 11, so that essentially flows downstream, which this ditch does flow through, by some private property, through private property. Flows won't be affected. A lot of the neighborhood folks kind of view this system as a creek. It kind of looks like that in its function and form on the landscape. So we want to let folks know that the flow rates won't really be changed by this project. Total estimated project cost is about $490,000. I mentioned earlier we had applied for a Bowser grant. We were successful in that application in the amount of $392,000. The Rice Creek Watershed District's local share of cost is estimated at $98,000, and we have that broken down by county at the bottom of the screen. Most of that will come out of our 2020 budget. And that leads to timeline. Again, provided that the project is ordered during the regular meeting later today, we will be developing the project and plans and specifications this summer and fall, working with Houston Engineering. Bidding would be likely conducted this winter with a construction schedule sometime next summer. We've got a pretty flexible schedule right now. Grant closeout would be expected at the end of next year. Project carries a 25-year lifespan as required by the Bowser grant, and the Watershed District will be responsible for operations and maintenance of this system, similar to our role at Hanson Park and the sand filter there. With that, I'd open to any other questions from the public or the
Questions
board.
from the board first, if anybody has any other questions for Kyle? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna open to the public, and seeing no public, we're gonna go ahead and close our hearing, and then we're gonna go to we're gonna open it up again for a public hearing. Is open for the Rice Creek Watershed's proposed ordering of the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project. The purpose of the hearing is to receive comments from the public on the project. Before the Watershed District can provide funds for this capital improvement, state law requires that the Board of Managers hold a public hearing, receive public comments, and make a judgment that the project is sound, cost-effective project to help fulfill our water research goals. This is the purpose of today's hearing. In accordance with state law, notice the hearing was published for 2 successive weeks in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, mailed to all cities within the Watershed District, as well as the district's 4 counties. First, I would ask Matt Koshin, our Lake and Stream Specialist, to give a brief presentation of the proposed project. Matt?
Thank you, President Preiner, members of the board. So I have a brief presentation that outlines this for the public, and then if there are any comments and questions at the end. So a brief presentation outline, I think very similar to Kyle's presentation. We'll talk about the location and the history, the current condition of Lower Rice Creek, what our project goals are here, and then the estimated cost, and of course the timeline. So Lower Rice Creek is the section of Rice Creek below Long Lake and just upstream of the Mississippi River. So it's the last section of Rice Creek before the outlet of our watershed in the cities of New Brighton and Fridley. Here's kind of a zoomed in view of it. So again, downstream of Long Lake here, the Rice Creek, of course, is flowing from the east to the west toward the Mississippi River. So that is what we refer to as Lower Rice Creek. Just some historical perspective of what Lower Rice Creek looked like. Here it is in 1938 with very little development in the area. You can see the creek is quite sinuous, lots of twists and turns. Moving ahead to 1947, not a whole lot of change, still not much development in the watershed. But then when we zip up to 1964, development is starting to occur in the city of Fridley especially. Then, of course, in 2016, full development. So as you'll see here, there hasn't really been any change or very little change to the sinuosity in the creek. So unlike our recent projects in Middle Rice Creek, where the creek had been straightened and we were working to restore this meandering pattern, here the sinuosity largely remains, and we're not working to restore sinuosity, but instead trying to stabilize eroding banks. And the need to do so results in the change in hydrology in the watershed. So the last two photos here show development in the watershed. Most of this development is done prior to the district being around and having rules for rate and volume control. So during rainstorms here, we have a really flashy hydrograph, really high peak flows, and then, of course, increased erosion and sediment transport capacity. So here's the result of all of that then. We have very high eroding banks, lots of erosion, lots of sediment transport downstream into Lock Lake, and loss of habitat in Lower Rice Creek. Lower Rice Creek is listed as impaired for biota, both fish and invertebrates. So based on the issues in Lower Rice Creek, the district engineer went through several different feasibility studies looking at the sources of phosphorus, or the sources of sediment, the magnitude of sediment, categorizing the sedimentation in downstream Lock Lake, and also, we'll talk about that in a second. So first off, categorizing the sources of sediment into Lock Lake. If this is the total deposition in Lock Lake, on the far left here, we see the majority of the source is coming from stream bank and bluff erosion, which is driving us to do this project. The past feasibility work also came up with some concept designs for these eroding stream banks, prioritized where the high priority sites are, and concept level costs. So here is the location of the proposed project. It is downstream of Highway 65 and upstream of Highway 47 in the city of Fridley. The parcels shown here are owned by the city of Fridley, but they are operated by Anoka County Parks as a regional trail. We have an access agreement in place with the city of Fridley and Anoka County Parks to construct the project. I'll say that they've been excellent partners so far working with us, and they're even offering to share some space and some access possibilities from the adjacent Fridley Civic Campus here on the left. So the project goals here are to reduce bank erosion in Lower Rice Creek by roughly 4,700 cubic yards per year, and then a corresponding reduction in sedimentation in Lock Lake by about 2,800 tons per year. Then we have a secondary goal of improving in-stream habitat for fish and invertebrates to address the impairment. So here are the estimated project costs, and we did, just like the last project, we did receive a Clean Water Fund grant for this project. So the majority of the project cost is coming from that Clean Water Fund grant at about $568,000. Rice Creek funds are coming in at about $150,000, and here's the breakdown by county for a total project cost of estimated project cost of $718,000, 410. Project timeline. So the board has elected to hire Bar Engineering to do the design and construction, or the design work for this project. We are working on getting a signed contract with them right now. So project development and design would occur this summer and into this fall. Bidding would probably occur, I have written fall here, bidding would probably occur more towards winter of 2019, with construction occurring late next calendar year, so fall and winter of 2020, with expected project closeout early in 2021. That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions from the board? Okay, no questions from the board. Seeing there is nobody in the audience, at this time, we will go ahead and close this public hearing. Next thing is open mic. Anybody in the audience would like to comment today? Seeing none, we're gonna move on to items requiring board action. Kyle, I believe we're on page 94.
Madam President, members of the board, yep, page 94. Again, already just explained the project, but at this time, staff is recommending that the Board of Managers introduce and adopt Resolution 2019-18 that has been drafted, begins on page 90, it's on page 95 and 96 in the packet. We're requesting that the Bald Eagle Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project be ordered in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 103B 251. I'll note that the title of the resolution is an error. It should say 103B 251, not 231. That's my typo.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we offer and move resolution number 2018-18.
Second.
Motion man seconded. So what, isn't it 2019-18? Or did you say?
Oh, it says 2018 written, 20,
Did I have a double typo there? No?
is that, it should be
2019.
2019-19?
Okay,
Dash 18.
dash 18.
Dash 18, okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
And that's with the typo corrections?
That's what's the question, correct. Waller?
Yes.
Hockey?
Yes.
Bradley?
Yes.
Wageman?
Yes.
Kreiner? Yes, motion passes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kyle. Pat?
Madam Chair, members of the board, on page 98 of your packet, we have a resolution ordering the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project. So at this time, staff are requesting that the board adopt this resolution.
We need a motion?
Madam President, I move that we adopt resolution number 2019-19, ordering the Lower Rice Creek Stabilization Project.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Waller?
Yes.
Hockey?
Yes.
Bradley?
Yes.
Wageman?
Yes.
Kreiner, yes, motion passes. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Patrick? We received a handout today.
Yeah, I can pull it up here as well.
Yeah.
All right, President Priner, Board of Managers. This is regarding the Joint Powers Agreement. On May 17th, 2019, the district received a permit application within the city of Columbus for a single-family residential subdivision project called Thornbeck Preserve Second Edition. The project is split between both Rice Creek Watershed District and Sunrise River Watershed Management Organization. In the current project design, there are multiple stormwater basins located on the legal boundary. This joint powers agreement would allow for both regulatory agencies to review the project based on the post-development hydrologic boundary, obtain long-term maintenance obligations, and have the authority to enter the property. Staff recommends the board approval of the attached joint powers agreement for Thornbeck Preserve Second Edition as it relates to permit application number 19047.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
Madam President? When I look at the joint powers agreement, first of all, there's a missing thing. There's property, third line, property located at bracket, address, close bracket, so that's missing. But, you know, I read this thing, there's no description of the project, what it is, no description of Turnbeck Preserve, no reference that I can see to the just mentioned application request, permit there's no reference to permit application 19-047. To me, it's not very well written.
Madam President. I wrote down on my notes, where is the joint powers agreement? So I concur with you. It's incomplete, in my opinion, because it didn't tell me what's really going on, other than we're going to use some rules, and it doesn't refer to what particular rules, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize that would be very detailed, but I was looking for something a little bit more substantive. Thank you.
Okay. So, I guess the best way to be to table this and have it come back to us the next time,
That would be my recommendation.
and
Who did write this?
probably Columbus.
No,
Leave our office assisted,
okay,
happy to
Yeah.
do it
go
over,
further into it.
okay.
Board of Managers, if I may. Yes, the joint powers agreement was drafted by Smith Partners. I believe there was some input maybe from the city of Columbus representing Sunrise River WMO. The purpose of bringing this to the Board of Managers today was just to consider the joint powers agreement. I mean, to obviously have it approved, but to consider that prior to the actual permit application coming before the board, kind of developing that framework so that the district can move forward
Can move
reviewing it
forward.
as such, and know that we'd be able to get a long-term maintenance agreement and things like that for things that aren't in our legal boundary.
So to help you to have sort of a consensus that it looks like we would end up approving this, but we'd like to see a new joint powers agreement that would indicate or include some of the things that are of concern.
Yeah, Amanda, excuse me,
Barbara.
Manager Hard,
Whoever.
I'm having a tongue-tied moment again. Manager Hockey, yeah, to address your question and regarding the input from Patrick, and maybe you can characterize this differently, Patrick, but there may be some permit timelines that are dependent
That's what I
on
Time.
getting some agreement here fairly soon on this. And so maybe one thing the board might consider is there a way that we could get consensus on this now with certain conditions added to be, I guess, reviewed, maybe authorized by Nick to enter into this agreement with Pat's signature to be able to accomplish this by adding certain items that you'd like to.
More specific items.
Yeah.
The
including
general
this.
ideas here, it's just,
Madam President, just what, you said may be some deadlines. Are there deadlines? And if so, what are they?
well, I know there's deadlines at the city, because I've already considered this, waiting for our okay. So I don't know what that time frame is, though. I'm sure it's right on.
Madam President, I can only say that based on the first, now, today is the first time I knew it was a development. You know, it makes sense. I can't imagine I'll have a reason not to approve it. I just don't have anything in front of me to approve.
Yeah. Let's see, we have a workshop,
Let's,
but what type of timeline? I
What-
guess let's do that, because if we do a consensus, that if this was properly drawn up, we are not saying we don't approve of the development, but like you said, it's the first time we've seen even the development idea, isn't it?
well, this is the second part of their development.
Or is
so-
it a
so
phase
that's-
two?
That's a phase two.
It's a phase two, so
Louis, do you
usually
have
we
any
have a phase two
suggestions?
come before us, yeah.
I
What is our
I wouldn't
proper
know that based
procedure
on this
here?
document.
Not on this document, it's a separate document.
So, Board of Managers, on page 103, there is an overall grading plan. It kind of shows phase two here, without a ton of detail. But you can see that there's the legal boundary through the middle there in the red line, and then there's the boundary line for the permitting authority. So that's what this joint powers agreement is talking about. Some of the stormwater ponds are kind of on that legal boundary.
Madam President, let me try a motion and see if it makes sense.
Wait, I asked
Yeah.
Louis for a comment.
sorry.
Let's
Yeah,
do that
Louis
first.
has got a comment.
Madam President, managers, the only comment I would offer is that you encounter this situation a number of times when there's a project or a development on the edge of your boundary. And the question sometimes is a project that's outside your boundary flowing in, or outside your legal boundary but hydrologically connected. And so this document is really our pretty standard template that simply addresses the question of how are these two permitting authorities going to work together to make sure that their issues are covered. And so the essential terms in number 5 is what sets that up. My sense is from your discussion that you'd just like to know a lot more about the project that's proposed and that kind of background information, have a description of that project, and understand how the permitting process is coming before you and going to work. So this is kind of a chicken and egg thing, but you want more description of the details.
Correct.
But the essential piece of the two permitting jurisdictions covering their bases is kind of the bottom line point of this document. I just hope that background helps you.
Yeah, because usually, isn't it that when we do something and we approve like phase one of something, we're always told that there'll be a phase two that's gonna come back to us, that this is just phase one, and phase two is going to come back. I haven't seen phase two.
But this isn't about any of that. This is just about the agreement between us and,
Except we have questions that say the property located, and we don't even have the address list.
but this is about Sunrise River Management and us. It's not about, if none of the rest existed, all we're saying is that we're working with them.
Right.
So I think we might be taking it to a deeper level than where we're actually at this point.
So let me try a motion.
Okay.
Madam President, I move that we authorize the district's interim administrator, working with council and as necessary, our district engineer, to enter into a joint powers agreement with Thornbrook Preserves Second Edition, related to Thornbrook Preserve Second Edition, and that agreement would be with the Sunrise River Watershed Management Organization.
Okay.
Get it, sir?
And I wouldn't ask you to say that over again, would
No,
I?
Try it again.
I have to read the minutes.
It'll be slightly different the second
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a second.
No,
Now we
I
have
understood what he
discussion.
had to say.
He had to
You know, what
You
he's,
seconded it, because I wasn't clear.
yeah, he's just asking for a little bit more detail, and I understand this is, and I read number 5, and I realized that that's what was the situation. But number 5 was such a general description of what was going on, and it referred to all the rules, and I didn't, you know, I wanted a little bit more, and I guess I didn't, the map wasn't enough to tell me what I wanted to know, but if there's, I'd second this motion, well, that's it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Yeah, it says at number 2, it's delineated attachment A, and delineated attachment A, I assume, is this where I don't know if it says attachment A at all, so is this attachment A? This drawing?
Yeah.
Yeah, Madam President,
Go
yeah, Manager Hockey, yes, this is intended to be attachment A, and certainly it would make a lot of sense to add a note on here that
Says
says it is
attachment A.
attachment
I
A.
appreciate that.
One other thing I'll note is that,
Okay.
as Patrick has indicated, there is a red line shown on this map here, that is the
Division.
current Rice Creek legal boundary. If you can see on this map here, and maybe it might help on this graphic, if a different color red line is or red or yellow or blue line is added along here to show where the actual future change in the boundary alignment would be once the project is completed and once a boundary change may occur into the future. But that generally follows the existing flow paths that are on site. And that, again, is the whole impetus for this, is that there are, you know, whole lots that are proposed to be platted right now that drain over to Sunrise River that are currently within the Rice Creek Watershed District because they're all in one parcel. So I think having some clarity on what this plan is, we can provide either a legal description for the property or, again, an address for the property in that first paragraph that would add to that information to help clarify that, and again, any other information that is necessary to provide a clarification on what the project is proposed to create.
Wait, this is a chicken and egg situation.
So, Madam President, I thank you for putting attachment A on there and actually put the hydraulic boundary in. I appreciate that. Mr. Smith, the motion okay with you? You're able to do it, you understand when you want it done? And
Madam President, Manager Waller, I understand the motion is to proceed with an agreement filling in more details that you've described.
Okay.
Yes, we can work with that.
Is that all right with everybody? Just
Yeah,
proceed with it. We're not approving it, we're just proceeding with it.
We're
Or are we
authorizing.
approving it?
We're authorizing to
the
be approved.
development of
Yeah.
a joint powers agreement.
Okay.
With direction to our staff to understand what we need.
the
added.
And to be brought back before you approve
I
it?
had,
No.
no.
No, we're authorizing the president to sign this and the administrator interim administrator to work with Mr. Smith and the engineers to provide a little more detail on these issues, and that they have authority to go ahead, and that way
So
we
that
won't.
won't be part of this motion, so is that gonna be, how against, is that an attachment to it, or inclusion of it, or?
I'm sorry.
What?
It's not part of this motion.
Well,
that
he
you
made a new motion.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is, the clarification part, because it's coming secondary, is that going to be then just an attachment to this, to your motion? Or how do we wanna approach
You,
that?
she wants to include those other two items, Smith's action and the engineer's action into the motion.
I thought
Are
my
you,
motion
you take
did
a friendly
I thought my
amendment?
motion did reflect
Okay.
that we were authorizing the interim administrator working with
Yeah, he
our
did.
attorney and as necessary, our district engineer to enter into a joint powers agreement
Okay,
involving
just wanna make sure we're all on
Sunrise
the same
River
page.
Watershed Management Authorization and the Turnwreck Preserve Second Edition.
And the president may sign it.
And the president may
All
sign
right,
it.
so we have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I think that had better be written up, because we know there's somebody that's recording from our, everything, and it might be some parts. that-
It'll, I'm sure, by the time we get minutes, it'll be done.
It'll be over with. Okay, Catherine's next.
Good morning, President Preiner, Board of Managers.
Good morning.
At the June 11th, 2019 Board Workshop, the Board provided feedback on a draft policy relating to remote meeting participation. The draft policy was modified by staff and legal counsel per the Board feedback, and the modified policy is attached to this memo on page 106 and 107 of your packet. Just some outlining of the next steps. We did have audiovisual equipment relating to remote meeting participation installed in the Rice Creek Watershed District Large Conference Room on June 20th. And basic system training by a Tierney Brothers representative is included in the quote and will be scheduled likely in the next few weeks. Staff will develop the remote participation kit that a manager would utilize and notify the board when the system is ready for use. We do have that equipment, should be, hopefully pretty straightforward kind of thing. So at this point, staff recommend that the board adopt the attached remote meeting participation policy dated 6/13/19, and staff update the policies and procedures manual accordingly.
For the people who are watching, could we put the correct item up on the?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Catherine, while you're doing that,
Okay.
this kit, Catherine, this kit that's going to be put together, is there going to be any classes so that the mission manager is gonna know how to use the kit?
So I mentioned that Tierney Brothers will be coming out to the office
To
to do a
train.
training. So I would, we're gonna have probably myself, Teresa, Ashley, kind of our in-house IT person, and then definitely would notify and have any members of the board that would like to attend that
Could we
training.
do that like prior to our regular workshop, so that we could coordinate, everybody could be there and we could all see it? and
I
Sure,
could do that
yeah.
at the workshop.
try- Yeah, and then
Yeah.
that way we can.
Yeah, yeah, anybody that's under 50 can help me. I usually say a 6-year-old, but
No, I think staff would agree with that, Manager Hockey. We want to make sure that we all kind of understand how to use the
How it
equipment and, can
Okay.
help each other out with it. So
Good.
that sounds good.
Okay,
thank you.
Madam
Okay, I
President?
make
go ahead.
I am not under 50, but I have several comments. That's okay. Recognizing you had a workshop discussion of this, I just wanted to point out several respects in which your policy is more restrictive than the statute requires, and just make sure the board
I
is
saw that.
consciously deciding that. In number 3 of the policy, it says that a quorum of the board must be physically present at your regular meeting location. The statute only requires that you have one manager present here. So if you go with as written, that's well within your discretion, but it's just that you consciously know you're
And that's what
making
we
that
had
more
talked
strict.
about.
So, Madam President, as I understand that, Mr. Smith, that eliminates us from electing President Hockey and then the rest of us being gone?
That's a good one.
Well, I don't think that's a serious question.
I withdraw the question.
That's what I thought. Okay, go ahead. Another restriction?
One other quick comment is in item 4B, it says that members of the public attending the meeting wherever their physical location can hear and see all discussion. The statute only requires that members of the public that are at your regular meeting location here must be able to see. So by requiring, say in Florida at the remote location, any public members must see and hear everything, you're just more strict than what the statute requires.
Well,
I-
in Florida, Arizona, Hawaii, it doesn't matter. They have to see it. This person at a location further away is going to be up on a TV screen, because how are they going to see the person when they're in Florida, Hawaii, or whatever, if it's a call-in or, and you're at a meeting?
I think we can
Vegas,
eliminate
I
that.
need clarification on that. How do they see you? Unless somebody's got a TV screen up.
Madam President, Manager Hockey, what I'm referring to is what the statute requires is that only members of the public attending the meeting here
Yeah.
must be able to hear and see all discussion and
I
testimony
think I would be
and all
in
votes.
favor of that.
So
But
how do we modify this to do that?
Just
then you would delete wherever their
remove.
physical location.
Yeah. On 4B, just delete that phrase.
Okay?
Okay,
And then finally, the statute was amended this last session to require that the minutes of a meeting, when there's remote participation, note the member that was remote and the reason for their remote attendance.
Okay.
And so you might want to add that to your policy so that it's understood that that's something you'll follow as well.
Okay, because usually when I say they're present or absent, okay, same thing, only we have to,
and you
Location.
said we may want to add it to, where do we add that, or is it?
I guess that would be a new number 5, or it could be an additional paragraph at the end. It's just simply that statutory requirement that your minutes note who participated remotely and a reason.
okay.
A new number 5, can we add that as a new number 5?
You can
Are
add
we
that
going to
as-
adopt this today? Should we be writing that in, that the number 5 is the same?
No, I don't,
Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, and now he just said maybe it could be a new number 5.
I think we
Is
could
this something
adopt
you
it
wanna
with
have?
those additions
Yeah.
instead of giving it back again.
I'm
Unless
not
every-
saying send it back again, but
Yeah.
should we verbalize and
Sure.
write in right now, number 5?
We can do that, and then we'll do that in the motion also. So
can-
number 5 will include that.
And number 5 is going to
Yeah.
wording, you've got it down, Mike, is what our
Yeah,
number
I
5
can-
wording's gonna be?
I think I can wing it. I do have, Madam President, one small change I'd like to make in number 2. There's manager seeking to attend a meeting by interactive video conference must be located in a space that's open, accessible to the public. Parens, instead of IE, EG,
It should be EG, that's correct.
a public library, municipal building, or conference room.
And you're saying the number 2 is more restrictive than the law?
Number 3,
Number 3 is a quorum of the board, okay, that's fine. Number 2 is what the law would say, in a public meeting place.
right, but I think it's those lists, as Manager Bradley suggested, EG is the more
Yeah,
appropriate
I've
reference,
got-
because they are just examples, not the only.
Yeah, in other words, an EG, okay.
Well, Madam President, I would move that we approve the policy for remote meeting participation with 3 amendments. One is in paragraph, point 2 of the policy, replace the IE with an EG. In 4B, strike the clause wherever their physical location. And adding number point 5, that the minutes will reflect, when there is remote attendance, the identity of the remotely attending manager and the reason that manager is attending remotely.
Now, okay, that's fine in minutes. All right, and I'm just saying it's fine in the minutes because who's reading our minutes? But I don't like it verbally stating somebody is out of town. I mean, it's, now, listen, guys, you gotta understand this. What I'm talking about is that it's an if somebody's watching,
Yeah.
if anybody watches us. And I like it when it's just stated that, the absence has been approved beforehand. That's no problem. But not to say they're gonna be gone for 4 weeks.
No, we don't say that, we just say that you're
That-
present.
Yeah, but,
You're
and the
pre-
minutes should say, but I'm just saying verbally, if it ends up having to be, because the minutes are gonna reflect it, and I just
You're
wanted to
present
say.
via remote.
I mean, god darn, I mean,
Madam President,
You
what
understand.
could be the cause of worrying about why, telling the public why you're missing? Or for what length of time?
Because you don't want people stealing.
Look at, guys, you gotta turn off your microphones if you're gonna discuss this part. Just forget it, okay?
Well, all I have to say is that you're absent via remote.
Yeah, that's all.
That's all you gotta say.
And it's the same thing, you don't
But it
wanna
says
have it
where.
stated,
It have
you
to
don't
say
wanna
where.
state that so-and-so's in a hospital and having their appendix removed or something
Yeah, but you
else.
just said that you have to state why.
Well, they're in the hospital, they're
Madam
ill.
President, I think we'd have to do some research to find out what the purpose of that legislative change was for and comply with it if you're, you know.
Not comply with it, it's just that there might be things where people are absent and maybe they went to jail. I mean, you don't know, and you don't need
Hey,
to have
that
it
happens. There's some
advertised,
county
or they're in
boards that are-
court, or they're speeding. They're
It's
speeding.
pursuant to paragraph 1, there's a
Okay,
requirement.
it
that
just says
manager
that all you have to say is they're absent and, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, out of town.
Located out of state or beyond, you say, the manager meets the requirements of our policy.
There you go.
There you go.
as far as I'm
Okay.
concerned.
We have a motion and a second?
I think we have a do we have
Do we have a
So do we
second?
have a motion? What's the
Didn't have a
nature of
second.
policy?
We didn't have a second, yeah.
second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just to be clear, Madam President, you will require that a quorum be physically present here.
Yes.
Yes.
3 people here.
I think that's necessary to reflect the public. That's not right to have one person sitting here and everybody else is kind of.
At least it's
That
not,
looks a little rough, guys.
at least
Andrew
it's not
Waller would be
stated the
willing to be the
president
only
has to
one.
be here.
Yeah.
No, actually, I was thinking that if we could have somebody who wanted to be absent for a long time, the rest of us might as well follow that precedent.
Okay, did we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I-
Okay, let's move forward.
Boy, Catherine.
Matt, yeah, you didn't know you had such
I
a
don't
stir
have any
going, didn't you?
desire to be president of Lewis, never have.
Madam Chair, members of the board, on page 109 of your packet, you'll see a memo from me discussing our Clean Water Partnership loan that was used to cover a portion of the Bald Eagle Lake alum project. So just a bit of background on this, or a refresher, as it were. The Bald Eagle Lake alum treatment, total cost was about $890,000. The cost of the Bald Eagle Lake alum treatment was split, roughly 50-50, between ad valorem funds collected by the district and the Bald Eagle Lake Water Management District, a special tax district for the residents of Bald Eagle Lake. When the Bald Eagle Lake alum project was done, not enough revenue had been generated by the Bald Eagle Lake Water Management District to cover that half of the cost. And so we acquired a Clean Water Partnership loan to cover that portion. However, by the time we started making payments on the Clean Water Partnership loan, the Bald Eagle Lake Water Management District had accrued a positive balance of $218,019, which now resides in our fund balance. So as we are looking forward to budgeting next year, this is kind of the result of internal staff discussions on budgeting and changing some fund numbers and moving some things around. This came up, and we are offering a recommendation to pay down the Clean Water Partnership loan in the amount of the positive fund balance that we have collected from the Bald Eagle Water Management District. So we haven't discussed this before. I'm kind of bringing this up
Yep.
at the board meeting. To us internally as staff, this makes sense because we're saving interest payments on this loan by making this one-time payment to the principal. But I guess I'll stop there and see if the board has any questions.
No questions, I mean, this is the most brilliant thing of saving some money. I mean, why is there even,
I have a question.
you do?
I think it's possible that we might want to leave something in the fund.
Okay?
So just because,
Just paying it down, it doesn't mean paying it off.
no. But
Right.
why have all the money that you have go out the door? You should leave a little bit for issues. I don't know. That's my thought.
Yep, President Priner, I understand the point, but the Bald Eagle Water Management District continues to collect funds.
They're still-
And currently, there's we have not had a year yet since 2010 where the expenditures in any given year would exceed what comes in
Okay.
from the collection. So we as staff,
You're
we
confident
can't,
of that?
we're confident
Okay.
that there's not going to be expenses in future years that exceed what we bring in.
Okay,
And, or we can slightly modify the expenses or change the expenses slightly, bring the expenses down to match what comes in.
match what comes in.
But thus far, that has not
Okay.
been an issue.
no, I just want to make sure that you're,
Good, sharp work on staff's part. Very, very good.
okay,
I make a motion,
go ahead.
and then you can discuss it more. Make a motion to move a one-time payment to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for the Bald Eagle Lake TMDL Implementation Project Clean Water Partnership Loan Number S as in Sam, R, F as in Frank, 0270, in an amount of $218,019.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam President, so just to be clear, the loan is like 400,000, is that what it says here?
Correct.
And you say that's what's still owed, 400,000?
Currently,
Currently?
Manager Waller, currently what is owed is $294,196.
294,000.
So we're leaving about 70.
There'll be roughly $76,000
Yeah.
remaining on the loan.
Okay, and you expect that then the loan should almost be finished within the 10-year period, this next year's tax collections or when you receive them?
Yep, Manager Waller, that the loan payments will be finished off within the next year and a half. But the Bald Eagle Water Management District is set to be renewed with the renewal of the redoing of the watershed management plan. So the funds will continue to come in with the Water Management District and used to pay off the loan until the loan is fully paid off.
But you only have 94,000 or something left on the loan, right?
76,000.
76.
Yep, and we'll have a little over 3 payments, 3.5 payments.
3.5 payments, that is?
Yes.
Madam President, it's my understanding that after the loan is paid off, while the WMD will exist as an authorization, subject to us approving further projects,
Right.
no funds will be collected.
That's right. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That is good news.
Yeah, it is. Excellent.
Okay, check register.
Okay, Madam President, I got, the register this month was super high, so I thought I'd just give a couple reasons why. One, there was a huge surety payment, and then I'm gonna read this, because this is correspondence from Teresa, and she wrote it better than I probably ever could have, so I'll just read hers. In 2017, the city of Shoreview Rice Creek Fields Stormwater Reuse Project was awarded a $150,000 Metropolitan Council Stormwater Grant, and in 2018, a $47,500 Rice Creek Urban Stormwater Remediation Cost Share Program Grant. The city of Shoreview has made significant progress on this project and requested a 90% grant reimbursement payment of the Met Council Stormwater Grant. And the Met Council released $135,000, which was 90% of their grant reimbursement payment. And they released it to the district, and we just acted as a pass-through to give them their money, and it shows up in the register, so that's
That's right.
why. If anybody has any questions, but
Thank you
Other-
for looking at that.
sure, you're very welcome. And, Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated June 28th, 2019, in the amount of $541,693.67, prepared by Redpath and Company.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any questions on staff reports? Chris, anything new?
Madam President, nothing to report on my end.
Okay. July calendar? Any questions on that or changes? Okay. And manager's update, I just want to make note that we did get a note from Mod that our next meeting there will be July 16th at 7 PM. I don't know if everybody got it, I just want to make sure it was.
At their new
At their new
headquarters.
headquarters, yeah.
July 16th.
Yep. July 16th, 7 PM. Anybody else? Manager's updates? Manager Waller?
Madam President, I received the brochure, I suppose it was called. It had to do, that was passed out at the meeting. It's entitled Water Knows No Boundaries. And at the workshop, I took exception to it, and I was asked if I had any other questions or comments. I still find it unacceptable. I don't agree with the first statement there that says water knows no boundaries. Water's a liquid. It doesn't think, so it doesn't know. And as far as boundaries goes, water's in my cup here, and it does react to boundaries. So I found that and although I realize I'm a minority here of one, but I found that really that this brochure was not what I would call an intellectually honest conversation about that area. And it didn't mention anything about the district putting in the blockage in Portland Avenue and generating the Schuneman Marsh phosphorus issues or other things that we've done and how we manage this. And so I found that myself, that when I come to take a look at this, it doesn't give, as I said, gives to me kind of a false narrative of what the whole situation is. That's all I have to comment.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Manager Bradley?
Nothing.
Manager Wegman?
Nothing?
Manager Huffy? And nothing from me. I need a motion to adjourn.
So move, adjourn.
Second?
Motion made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.